She's turned Prince Harry into a man of non-substance.
It just struck me as like completely empty.
Sad that the boys are not friends. I cooked for them as young boys. Now I don't know what's going on. I'm really glad Princess Diana's not here to see it.
So I don't know how staying silent.
The message contained no accusation, no formal rejection, and no direct mention of Meghan's future. Yet Harry understood its meaning immediately. Behind the palace's carefully chosen words was a devastating warning. The door to royal life had not merely closed, it may have been sealed forever. It arrived through a senior palace intermediary during what Harry believed would be another controlled conversation about family relations, possible visits, and the slow repair of ties damaged by years of public conflict. He expected familiar concerns: security, press attention, protocol, the usual language designed to delay difficult decisions without openly refusing them. But this communication felt different. It spoke of appropriate participation, institutional stability, and the need to protect the monarchy from renewed controversy. Meghan's name was carefully avoided, as though leaving it unwritten could make the meaning less brutal. Harry read the words again, searching for space between them, looking for any suggestion that the palace was discussing timing rather than exclusion. Then, one sentence changed everything. Any future royal involvement, the message warned, would depend upon trust that could not be restored through a single appearance. That was when the unease became something colder. The palace was no longer asking when Meghan might return. It was questioning whether she could ever return at all. Harry had spent years defending their departure as an act of survival and freedom. Publicly, he insisted they had chosen a different life. Privately, however, he had carried another belief, one he rarely admitted. He thought Meghan might someday walk back into royal life on her own terms, protected from the forces he believed had failed her, and finally treated with the dignity she deserved. He had imagined reconciliation happening slowly. A private meeting, a carefully managed ceremony, perhaps a quiet conversation with Charles in which old anger gave way to family loyalty. But the message suggested the institution had moved beyond negotiation. To the palace, Meghan's return would not be the simple return of one relative. It would reopen every disputed memory, every private accusation, every public interview, and every wound neither side had agreed to close. More disturbing still was the possibility that senior royals had already accepted a divided future, one in which Harry might attend selected family events while Meghan remained permanently outside the official structure. But who had authorized that language? Charles, trying to protect the crown without rejecting his son? William, drawing a boundary he believed should never be crossed? Or courtiers acting before either brother could interfere? Harry could not yet answer that. What frightened him more was the thought that Meghan might not be surprised at all. She may have understood long ago what he was only beginning to see. To understand why a few carefully written sentences shattered Harry's remaining hope, he had to return to the moment when Meghan's royal future first began slipping beyond anyone's control. When Harry and Meghan stepped away, the decision was presented as a new arrangement, not a permanent exile. Behind closed doors, Harry believed time would soften the anger and create a path back. But the palace was quietly recording every broken promise, public accusation, and unanswered warning. Their departure had not been caused by one explosive argument. It grew from months of private tension over protection, control, public pressure, and Meghan's uncertain place inside a hierarchy that expected obedience before understanding. Every disagreement left another crack. Every failed conversation made compromise feel more distant. Harry believed stepping back would create breathing room. Away from constant scrutiny, tempers could cool. He and Meghan could build an independent life while negotiating a healthier relationship with the monarchy. To him, distance was not abandonment. It was a pause before something fairer could be created. The palace saw something far more dangerous. Senior officials believed the couple had challenged one of the crown's oldest rules: royal privilege could not be separated from royal duty whenever responsibility became painful. Meghan, however, had no desire to regain influence by surrendering her voice. She wanted security, dignity, and control over how her story was told, not another return to carefully managed silence. Behind closed doors, repeated attempts to define a new role quietly failed. Who would approve public statements? Could private disputes remain private? Would commercial freedom exist beside royal status? Who would control their appearances, access, and titles? Every discussion reached the same wall. Harry continued reassuring Meghan that family loyalty would eventually overcome institutional resistance. He believed Charles's affection for his son, his memories of Diana, and concern for his grandchildren would prevent the separation from becoming permanent. But the monarchy was not thinking emotionally. It was calculating risk. A distant prince could be managed. A half-return was more dangerous. Meghan might attend a major ceremony, create an image of unity, and later speak freely about what happened behind palace doors. To courtiers, that uncertainty threatened everything the institution depended upon: discipline, silence, and control. Long before Harry recognized the change, invitations became narrower. Informal calls disappeared. Conversations once described as negotiations became notifications. Every interview, disputed account, memoir revelation, and private exchange that reached the press strengthened the belief that Meghan's return could reopen a crisis the palace wanted buried. The question was no longer whether she could follow protocol for one afternoon. The deeper fear was that welcoming her back would appear to validate her version of the past, or suggest the crown had surrendered under pressure. Harry remembered the promise he had made when they left. Freedom would not mean losing his family forever. Now that promise felt less like reassurance and more like a debt he might never be able to repay. Yet the palace's resistance was only half the story, because while Harry kept searching for a route back, Meghan had begun questioning whether royal life held anything worth returning to. Harry thought Meghan was waiting for the right invitation. He did not realize she had stopped waiting at all. In private, her language had changed. Her conditions had hardened, and the future she imagined no longer included palace corridors, controlled appearances, or another carefully rehearsed royal surrender. At first, Meghan had not rejected every possibility of returning. She was prepared to consider a carefully negotiated role if it came with genuine protection, public respect, and some acknowledgement of what she believed had driven them away. She did not expect the past to disappear, but she wanted proof that the rules had changed. That proof never came. Months became years, and each attempt at reconciliation appeared to begin with the same demand: remain quiet, avoid difficult questions, and accept limited inclusion without challenging the palace's version of events. What was offered as peace began to feel like another form of control. Slowly, Meghan separated three things Harry still treated as one. She could return to Britain without returning to royal duty. She could reconnect with individual relatives without trusting the institution. And she could allow Harry to rebuild family ties without standing beside him at official events. In private, she allegedly made her boundary clear. She would not walk back into the same system unless the conditions that forced them out had fundamentally changed. Those conditions were never written down, but their meaning was unmistakable: control over her public image, protection from hostile briefings, security for her family, recognition of her children's place, direct communication with senior royals, and freedom from public humiliation disguised as tradition. Meghan understood what any return would become. Every expression would be examined. Every outfit, gesture, seat, and conversation would be judged as evidence of obedience, ambition, resentment, or defeat. Even royal protocol carried a hidden message. A walking order was never merely a walking order. A seat was never simply a seat. Each decision revealed who held power and who was expected to submit. Her suspicion grew darker. Perhaps the palace wanted her presence, but not her voice. Her return could create powerful images of family unity while forcing her to accept the crown's account of the past through silence. Harry saw reconciliation differently. He was not only trying to repair relationships, he was reaching for pieces of himself: the son, the brother, the prince, and the man shaped by a world he had never fully escaped. Meghan saw the danger. One appearance could become another. One compromise could lead to the next, until they were slowly pulled back into the system they had left. When Harry spoke hopefully about a future royal gathering, Meghan did not argue. She asked only, what would actually be different? He had no convincing answer. After reading the palace message, that question returned with brutal force. For the first time, Harry understood that Meghan's silence had not been uncertainty. It may already have been a final decision. Then came the conversation that destroyed Harry's final illusion, a conversation in which Meghan no longer spoke about conditions, apologies, or timing, but about a life she had already chosen without the crown. Harry had spent years believing Meghan's return depended on the palace changing its position. Then, during one painfully calm conversation, he understood the truth. Even if the doors opened tomorrow, Meghan might refuse to walk through them, and nothing he said could make royal life feel safe again. Harry explained the palace message slowly, watching for anger, shock, or some sign that Meghan was ready to challenge it. He expected questions. He expected pain, perhaps even defiance. Instead, she remained calm. To Meghan, the message was not a revelation. It was confirmation. The monarchy, she told him, still wanted the same things it had always demanded: certainty, control, and silence. Those conditions might protect the institution, but they would never protect her. Harry tried to separate the family from the crown. He argued that attending one major occasion would not mean surrendering their independence. A memorial, a wedding, or a national ceremony could simply be a family moment. Meghan did not accept that distinction. Royal gatherings were never merely personal. Every invitation carried a political purpose. Every photograph became part of the palace's public story. Her presence would not belong entirely to her. It would be used as proof that the conflict had ended and the monarchy had survived it. For years, Harry had imagined her beside him again, at a coronation anniversary, at a family wedding, at a memorial connected to Diana. Those private images allowed him to believe their departure had not become permanent. Then Meghan asked the question that destroyed that hope. Would she be welcomed as a relative, or displayed as evidence that the palace had won? Harry had no answer. In that moment, he understood he had been negotiating with the wrong side. He believed the palace held the only key to Meghan's return. But Meghan had built a boundary of her own, and it was stronger than any royal order because it had been shaped by broken trust. She did not ask Harry to abandon his father, his brother, or the family he still loved. She told him he had to decide what relationship he wanted with them. But she would not keep entering a world that made her feel judged, controlled, and unsafe. That truth hurt more than a formal ban. A ban could be blamed on courtiers, challenged in public, or reversed by Charles. Meghan's refusal could not be overturned by rank, pressure, or negotiation. Their escape had given them freedom, but it had demanded different sacrifices. Meghan gained distance from a world she never trusted. Harry lost the world that once defined him. If he returned alone, the palace could present it as a division in his marriage. If he stayed away, Meghan would be accused of keeping him from his family. Her absence might become permanent. Yet Harry would still be forced to defend it from both sides. That realization immediately created a more dangerous question if Meghan never returned. Could Harry maintain any place inside the royal family without appearing to choose the crown over his wife? The palace did not need to ban Meghan publicly. It had a quieter strategy, one that placed Harry under unbearable pressure. He could return for selected family moments, preserve a fragile connection with his father, and reclaim part of his old life. But he might have to do it alone. The proposal was never presented as a full royal return. Harry would not regain his former position, official duties, or influence inside the institution. Instead, he could be welcomed at carefully chosen private gatherings and major ceremonial occasions, provided every appearance remained controlled. On the surface, it looked compassionate. Charles could maintain contact with his son. The palace could avoid appearing cruel. Harry would be offered a narrow path back without forcing the monarchy to resolve its deeper conflict with Meghan. But the conditions carried their own warning. There could be no negotiations through the media, no filming, no commercial use of royal access, and no unofficial announcements. Harry's movements would be restricted. His access to private spaces could be limited. Photographs, statements, and public messaging would remain firmly under palace control. Harry recognized the trap immediately. Every solo appearance would create the same brutal headline. The family had accepted him, but not his wife. Senior courtiers could justify that distinction easily. Harry had been born into the monarchy. He belonged to its bloodline, its history, and its line of succession. Meghan had entered through marriage and later became one of the institution's most powerful critics. In palace thinking, those were not equal positions. Then came the question of the children. Archie and Lilibet remained connected to the dynasty, raising future concerns over titles, family ceremonies, security, education, inheritance, and access to royal traditions. Meghan's permanent absence could make it easier for the palace to build a limited connection with them without restoring either parent to royal life. To Meghan, that possibility would feel deeply threatening. The crown might preserve the children's symbolic value while continuing to exclude their mother. What appeared to be family outreach could slowly become leverage. Harry felt trapped by guilt. He wanted his children to know their relatives and understand the history they had inherited. But he would not allow access to the monarchy to become a weapon against Meghan. Charles may have seen controlled reconciliation as a way to save what remained of his relationship with Harry. William, however, allegedly feared that even a limited return would reopen conflict and weaken boundaries the palace had spent years establishing. Most dangerous of all, the offer carried no deadline. The longer Harry hesitated, the more isolated he became, and the easier it was for the monarchy to continue without him. This was not an invitation home. It was a test of whether Harry could survive between two worlds while demanding nothing from either one. But before Harry could decide whether to accept that divided future, an older royal wound returned to the surface, the memory of Diana, and the price paid by those who could not conform. For Harry, Meghan's rejection of royal life could never be separated from Diana's suffering. Every warning, restriction, and controlled invitation awakened the same fear, that the monarchy protected itself first and understood pain only after it became irreversible. But Meghan refused to become another royal tragedy. Harry did not see palace conflict as an ordinary family disagreement. Every tense conversation carried the weight of memory. Every restriction reminded him of isolation. Every carefully managed statement seemed to echo the same old instinct: protect the institution first, then confront the human damage later. That was why Meghan's refusal to return meant more to him than a personal boundary. He saw distance as survival. Diana had never fully escaped royal expectation, even after her life changed beyond recognition. Meghan, in Harry's mind, was doing what his mother had never been allowed to do completely, walking away before the pressure consumed everything. But Meghan resisted that comparison. She understood why Diana's story shaped Harry's fears, yet she did not want her decisions reduced to another chapter in an inherited royal tragedy. She was not trying to become a symbol of suffering. She wanted control over her own future. That difference created a painful tension between them. Harry believed he was protecting Meghan from history repeating itself. But the more tightly he held onto Diana's memory, the harder it became to hear what Meghan was saying now. She did not want to be rescued from royal life. She wanted Harry to accept that she had already left it behind. Inside the palace, the Diana comparison caused quiet anger. Royal officials believed it turned every disagreement with Meghan into proof of cruelty. Their defense was simple. The modern monarchy had offered greater freedom, influence, and support than previous generations had received, only to see private frustration transformed into public accusation. Harry rejected that argument completely. The language may have changed, he believed, but the demand remained the same. Endure pressure quietly, protect the crown, and never allow personal pain to threaten the institution. Then came the question of Diana's legacy. Harry feared that returning alone might look like surrendering the principles he claimed to have inherited from his mother. William allegedly saw the opposite. To him, duty, restraint, and continuity were not betrayals of Diana, but part of honoring her place in royal history. The brothers carried the same loss, yet drew completely different lessons from it. Each believed he was protecting their mother's memory. Each saw the other's choices as dangerous. For Harry, Meghan's permanent absence carried another devastating consequence. It could close the last path he believed might lead back to William. Without a shared return, there would be no carefully managed family moment capable of softening years of resentment. The struggle was no longer only about whether Meghan would return. It had become a battle over who controlled the meaning of the family's past, and who would decide the monarchy's future. And as Harry wrestled with Diana's shadow, the palace began preparing for a future that no longer depended on reconciliation, forcing him to confront how completely the monarchy had learned to move on. Harry once believed his absence left a wound the monarchy could not hide. But behind palace doors, roles were reassigned, loyalties hardened, and a new image of royal stability took shape. The most devastating message was not that the family was angry, it was that the institution had adapted. Slowly, the responsibilities once associated with Harry were absorbed by others. William and Catherine became the central image of continuity. Anne carried the weight of duty without complaint. Edward and Sophie stepped forward with discipline, while younger royals were gradually prepared for a future shaped by service, control, and fewer public risks. The monarchy had filled the empty spaces. That adaptation weakened Harry's position more than any official punishment could. The palace no longer needed his return to prove strength, attract attention, or preserve the appearance of continuity. What had once been treated as an active crisis was quietly being moved into history. Royal advisors stopped planning around reconciliation and began planning around containment. The Sussex conflict became something to manage, not resolve. Invitations were restricted. Access was narrowed. The institution learned to respond to criticism with silence, patience, and forward motion. For Harry, every major ceremony carried a private sting. Anniversaries passed, charities continued, family milestones were celebrated. The machinery of royal life moved ahead without him and Meghan, as though their absence had become ordinary. Meghan could read the same development differently. To her, the palace's ability to move on proved that royal belonging had always been conditional. Acceptance lasted only while a person remained useful, obedient, and willing to protect the institution's image. That difference fed the public battle. The monarchy presented restraint and continuity as stability. Supporters of Harry and Meghan saw the same silence as avoidance, a refusal to confront the grievances that had driven them away. Now every side was trapped. The palace could not welcome Meghan warmly without appearing to retreat. Meghan could not return casually without seeming to abandon everything she had said about her experience. Harry could not compromise without being accused of betraying either his wife or his family. William's growing authority made the divide even harder to cross. His alleged position was not built on emotion but trust. Affection might survive conflict, but trust, once broken, could not be restored by one conversation or ceremonial appearance. Charles's remaining chance to repair things personally was narrowing. A future monarchy shaped more firmly by William could offer less flexibility and fewer exceptions. Harry had once believed time would heal the damage. Now he saw the opposite. Temporary arrangements were becoming permanent customs. Distance was becoming tradition. Younger relatives might one day know him and Meghan through headlines and family stories rather than shared memories. He could no longer wait for one dramatic palace reversal. He had to decide what kind of connection could survive without Meghan's return. With the monarchy moving forward and Meghan refusing to move backward, Harry was left facing the decision he had avoided for years, whether to keep fighting for a shared return that may never happen. Harry could continue chasing an invitation that satisfied no one, or accept that the life he once imagined had vanished. Meghan might never stand beside him on a royal balcony again. The crown might never apologize. And reconciliation, if it came at all, would look nothing like return. For years, Harry had been pulled between forces that refused to move. His loyalty to Meghan demanded protection. His longing for family demanded compromise. The palace wanted control, William wanted trust restored, and Charles appeared trapped between private affection and the limits of the crown. Harry finally understood that reconciliation and restoration were not the same thing. He could rebuild a relationship with his father without reclaiming royal duty. He could speak privately with relatives without asking Meghan to follow palace rules again. His children could learn about their heritage, know parts of their family, and understand the history connected to their names without being drawn fully into the institution. But even that path carried pain. If Meghan stayed away, critics would say she was still controlling the distance. If Harry returned alone, others would accuse him of reaching for royal privilege while refusing royal responsibility. Every compromise could be twisted into betrayal. Meghan's position was firm, but it was not triumphant. She had not defeated the monarchy. She had paid for distance with broken relationships, permanent suspicion, and the loss of a future she may once have believed was possible. Her refusal represented the cost of trust that could not be repaired by ceremony. Harry grieved that lost future quietly. He had imagined Meghan respected inside the family, their children moving naturally between two worlds, and old wounds becoming less powerful with time. Now those hopes felt like memories of something that had never truly existed. The realization changed his struggle with the palace. He could no longer demand a route back for Meghan if she did not want one. Yet another question remained. Would Harry begin returning more often alone? Each visit could reopen his bond with Charles while creating new strain at home. It could also give the palace exactly what it wanted, access to Harry without confronting the deeper conflict surrounding Meghan. Ambiguity served the monarchy well. It could insist the door remained open to Harry while refusing to define whether Meghan would ever be welcomed through it. Harry had not simply realized that Meghan might never return. He had realized that part of her survived royal life by building an identity that no longer required royal acceptance. The greatest separation was no longer distance. It was the widening divide between Harry's unfinished connection to the crown and Meghan's determination to leave it behind. The next royal invitation would reveal whether Harry was prepared to enter alone, and what that decision might cost him at home. Because the palace may still believe time will bring Harry back. But the truth he now carries is far more dangerous. Meghan may have already made her final decision, and the monarchy may be the last to understand it.